Well, we're in this season called Lent. It started on Ash Wednesday, and it takes us all the way through Good Friday into, celebrating Easter. And I think about that word Lent. It's simply a word that comes from an old English word that means spring. And I don't know for you, but I desperately, desperately want spring to be here now. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the wintertime. I love snow, especially a white Christmas when we're blessed with a white Christmas. I love that beautiful landscape where the snow's covered everything and the trees and the sun's out shining off the snow. I love snow. I love skiing in the snow. But right now, at this point of March, I'm done with snow. I'm done with the cold. I'm done with the ice. I'm done with it all. Like spring come quickly. And I know it's coming quickly, but I want it here right now. But that word Lent simply means spring. But it's a season where we get to pause and reflect and remember all that Jesus did for you and for me. And I think about all that Jesus, especially in this season, all that Jesus did for us. And I think about the storyline that was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years in the making, that God perfectly scripted. And I think about that story, especially this season of Lent into Easter, and how scandalous it really is. I think about the earth and the Old Testament, the story before Jesus walked here on this earth, and Old Testament prophets that were talking about this coming king, this coming Messiah, and they had no idea how scandalous the storyline was really going to be. I think about Mary and Joseph, who realized that God was doing something so significant, through them with their son Jesus, but they had no idea how scandalous that storyline was really going to be. I think about the disciples, 12 ordinary people like you and me that Jesus handpicked. And they got to walk with Jesus, which was cool. They got to hear his teaching, which was awesome. They got to see some amazing miracles, which was really cool. But they had no idea the scandalous nature in which, that was going to unfold in front of them as they watched Jesus arrested, beaten, crucified, and placed in a tomb. And all of that we call good news. Gospel church, any length of time, you've heard of this word gospel. And so many times when we say the word gospel, when we think of the word gospel, we just connect it directly to a book of the Bible. Specifically, the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I mean, these four books, these four Gospels, right? They tell the story of Jesus. I mean, specifically, they tell the story of God's perfect plan to restore what sin fractured. They tell the story of God's perfect plan to redeem, to rescue, to ransom, to buy back. And this is what we call good news. It's great news. It's amazing news. Something that we couldn't do ourselves, but God so loved the world that he gave. But have you ever wondered, how did we get our English word gospel? I mean, it literally means good news. In fact, every time I say the word gospel, I say the phrase, hey, the gospel or the gospel of Luke, which the word gospel means good news. I always attach good news to gospel, and often I think we should just get rid of our English word gospel and just say good news. We could say the book of Jesus, who shares the good news of Jesus, or the book of Luke, who shares the good news of Jesus, or the book of Mark, who shares the good news of Jesus, or the book of John that shares the good news of Jesus. I think we should just get rid of gospel and say good news. But have you wondered where our English word gospel comes from? Well, in fact, the word gospel comes from the Old English word Godspell. It's a compound word, two words slammed together. And well, gospel is good because God is good, and spell, which means story or message. So good story or good message or good news. Well, that Old English word gets tethered all the way back to the ancient Greek word, what the New Testament was mainly written in. And that Greek word is euangelion. Again, another compound word. Eu meaning good and angelion meaning, well, announcement. Now, you might be looking at this word euangelion, and maybe you're wondering to yourself, hey, Chris, like I see the word angel in there. Well, angel is in there, and it's every time I say the word angel, I will attach, it means messenger, because so many times we think of angel, we think about wings and a halo. No, that word just means messenger. Maybe you're looking at euangelion and you're wondering to yourself, is this where we get the word evangelism? It is. It's where we get the word evangelism, to share the story. It's where we get that word from, to share the good news. Maybe you're looking at euangelion and you're wondering, well, I see the word lion. Does that have anything to do with lions? And no, it doesn't. It's just the ending of the word, but that's okay. And when we think about this ancient Greek word, good announcement, good news, it gets connected all the way back to, well, an ancient Hebrew word, what the Old Testament was written in. And the ancient Hebrew word that it gets attached to is this Hebrew word, beser. And this is where this word gospel, good news, comes alive. You see, in the ancient Hebrew, the word beser means royal announcement, national news. Think about that. Royal announcement. This word beser was used when a king was receiving news or when a king was giving a royal announcement. It was attached to royalty, to kings. It's national news, a royal announcement. And understanding where this word came from thousands of years ago helps us understand this word in our modern English. You see, when we go back to our word in English, gospel, again, don't relegate it to just a book of the Bible. Think about this as a royal announcement. That Matthew was sharing the gospel, the good news, a royal announcement about Jesus, the King. That Mark was sharing the royal announcement. That Luke was sharing the royal announcement. That John was sharing the royal announcement about Jesus. Now, we have 4 gospels or 4 books that share the good news, the royal announcement about Jesus, but most scholars say there's actually a 5th gospel. I don't know if you've heard of the 5th gospel, but this gospel comes before Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. In fact, this 5th gospel comes and is found in the Old Testament, and the book is called Isaiah. In fact, the Old Testament prophet was named Isaiah. And what's interesting about Isaiah is usually it's split into 2 different books or 2 different parts or 2 different scrolls. The first one is chapters 1 through 39, and the second one is chapters 40 through 66. Now, sometimes the second part is actually separated into 2, and some people say there's 3 different, but for this moment, let's just view it as 2 different parts of Isaiah, chapters 1 through 39, and then 40 through 66. The first part of Isaiah, chapters 1 through 39, is all about judgment, God's judgment, specifically focused on his people, Israel. But something interesting happens in the second part, chapters 40 through 66. All of a sudden, it goes from judgment to hope, and specifically a future hope. Most scholars think that Isaiah 1 through 39 were actually attached to the Old Testament prophet Isaiah. But the second part, chapters 40 through 66, was actually, spoken some 150 years later. So there's this separation of time. And that's really important to understand as you're reading through Isaiah, especially when it comes to God's judgment, chapters 1 through 39, to God's people of Israel. And this future hope focused on God's doing something significant. And understanding that, we get to, chapter 52 of Isaiah. And understanding that this is a future hope. This is what we're told in verse 7. How beautiful in the mountains are the feet of those who bring good news. That's an ancient Hebrew word, beser. Who bring good news, who bring a royal announcement fit for a king. Who proclaim peace, who bring good tidings. That phrase, bring good tidings, is also the same Hebrew word, beser. Who proclaim salvation, who say to Zion, your God reigns. And then we move into verse 10, and listen to this. The Lord will lay bare his holy arm in the sight. Now, this idea of his arm is an image of God's strength. And when we're told that it's lay bare, this is the mental image you should have in your mind. To lay bare is this image of God rolling up his sleeves. Now, I don't know how big God's biceps are, but I promise you, his biceps are bigger than mine and bigger than yours. I don't know how big your biceps are. I'm just saying, right? He's rolling up his sleeves, right? He's flexing the power and strength in his arm. And it's this image of God saying, let's get to work. I have something to do. I have something to accomplish. Let's go. For all the nations. Remember, future hope. Chapters 40 through 66 of Isaiah is about this future hope for all nations. And all the ends of the earth will see what? The salvation of God. There's a royal announcement that God is rolling up his sleeves, that we're going to see his power on display, his work on display, his strength on display for all people, all nations, to the ends of the earth. His salvation is coming. You see, when you hear the word gospel, good news, the image I want you to have in your mind is God's perfect plan to save, to redeem, to ransom, but sin obliterated out of his love for me, out of his love for you. And in this series, Scandals of the Scars, we're going to be looking at the fourth of what's called the servant songs, specifically found in Isaiah chapter 52 through chapter 53. And so many times when we read the Bible, we're looking at chapter and then verse. And when the Bible was written, they didn't have chapters and verses. And so there's this break between chapters 52 and 53, but there shouldn't be because it's all part of this one thought. And so we're going to be looking at this fourth of four servant songs. As we look at this today and next week, we're going to pull out 5 very specific actions that the gospel, the good news, the royal announcement of Jesus must change, shape all of our lives. Today we're going to look at 2 specifically. Part 2, we're going to look at the next 3. But again, all 5 of these actions are going to reflect this announcement, the good news about the servant, the king, Jesus, who came to die for all people, all nations. Now, what I'm going to do in this series, I'm actually going to give you the action first, and then we're going to look at the text. So the first action that we're going to be looking at is the action of to live in the tension that the gospel, the good news, is always filled with tension. In fact, following Jesus, being a Jesus follower, has a sense of tension that will wells up. And here's the thing for us as human beings, we don't enjoy tension, do we? I know we like to say we do. I'm not scared of it, but at the end of the day, we kind of like to move away from tension, don't we? If there's a difficult conversation that you have to have with someone, feel the tension. Especially the closer that person is to you, the more you care about that person, right? The more intense that tension. And we just don't like to have those type of conversations, do we? Oh, when it comes to eating healthy and exercising, we know we need to. But Doritos are better than a carrot. Watching a movie is so much more enjoyable than cranking out hours at the gym or running miles on a treadmill, right? But we know we need to. There's something within us that we like to walk away from tension. But when it comes to the gospel, the good news, it's filled with tension. Listen how this fourth servant song starts. See, my servant will act wisely. I think it's interesting that all of a sudden these servant songs are, when it's connected to the future hope, is describing Jesus, the King. Now, the word servant throughout all of Isaiah is used in many different ways. Sometimes it's attached to different individuals. Sometimes it's attached to a collective of people. Again, chapters 1 through 39 is about God's judgment. But something shifts, especially within the servant songs, that all of a sudden it starts to describe Jesus, the King Jesus. And you just feel that tension, don't you? Jesus King and Jesus as servant. In verse 13, all of a sudden, it says, see my servant. My. And a question that needs to kind of surface within your mind is like, who's talking? Is it Isaiah? Is it another prophet? Or is it God himself? Where God goes, hey, see my servant will act wisely. That phrase, act wisely, literally means to succeed. Will succeed, will win. Why? Because of his wisdom, he is going to succeed. He will win. And that feels, well, not tension-filled at all, does it? Well, until what God says next. He will be raised, lifted, and highly exalted. It's the image of Jesus being raised from the grave, meaning he died. He was crucified, placed in a tomb. He will be raised. He will be lifted. This is the image of Jesus being raised into heaven. And then we're told that he's highly exalted. The risen King Jesus seated next to God the Father himself. Just as there was many who were appalled at him. That word appalled is an extremely strong Hebrew word that means to fear, to have dread. Just as many were appalled, who feared, who had dread when they looked at him, Jesus. His appearance was so disfigured beyond that of any human being, and his form marred beyond human likeness. Like, that's the picture of Jesus being beaten, his skin being ripped off of his bones, him being nailed to a piece of wood, suffering. It's the image of the cross. Again, no one would have scripted that storyline. It's why it's so scandalous. No one, the prophets, didn't understand what this coming Messiah, this coming King would have to go through. Mary and Joseph didn't understand what their son, Jesus, was going to have to go through. The disciples who walked with Jesus had no clue what Jesus was preparing to do, to die, a brutal death, because of God's love. So he will sprinkle many nations. This ancient word sprinkle has this idea of a priest who was cleansing someone who was unclean, whether with water as a purity rite or a blood sacrifice that would cover someone's sin. They would sprinkle many nations, and kings will shut their mouths because of him. Now, there's many different ways for kings to shut another king's mouth, but this is not the image. Right? A king would show their power and strength with their mighty army. But this king, this servant, was going to shut the mouths of other kings in such a vastly different way. For what they were not told, they will see. And what they have not heard, they will understand. You see, the gospel, the good news, the royal announcement about Jesus, there's a tension that we all have to lean into. A tension that Jesus experienced. And a tension that he has called us to live within. There's this moment where Jesus all of a sudden called in the crowds of people and his disciples. And this is what Jesus said, again, to his disciples, those he handpicked to follow him, and the crowds around him. He says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. If you are a Christ follower, this is the call. That's the tension you must feel. To deny self, take up your cross, to live your one life, the life you're living right now, as if you're already dead, as if this life doesn't matter. Why? Because you understand in God's economy, there's a kingdom here now and forevermore. And Jesus goes, for whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel, the good news, will save it. The posture Jesus is talking about is living your life with everything being held in open hands. That you live as a disciple, as a Christ follower with open hands. Hey, God, I have one life. It's all yours. Take whatever you want. Hey, God, my time, my calendar, God, open hands. How much time do you want me to give you? You got it. Hey, God, my reputation, God, it's open hands. It's not mine. It's not my life. This is in your hands. Hey, God, my dreams, open-handed, God, my dreams, whatever that looks like, God, I give to you. Hey, God, my money, God, my bank account, everything I earn, God, if you want it all, I'll give it all to you. If you want some, I'll give it some. Hey, God, I'm going to live a life of generosity. This is the posture. Do you feel the tension of being a Christ follower? Jesus is clear. He goes, you got to deny self, take up your cross. If you want to save your life, lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. He goes on and goes, what good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? You can gain everything in this one life you have on this planet and still lose. Because in God's economy, it looks vastly different than what this world is trying to convince us of. If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man, Jesus, will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with his holy angels. Do you feel the tension? Do you feel the tension? We're called to live in the tension. That's what the gospel, the good news, the royal announcement is all about. Which leads to the second action that we got to pull out of Isaiah. We got to see the extraordinary in the ordinary. Starting in chapter 53, listen to this. Who has believed our message? And whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? That word revealed means to uncover. Like it's been covered, but it's going to get uncovered. And again, we see this other image of the arm of the Lord, the power of God. God has rolled up his sleeves. He is ready to put in work because he has something to accomplish. And then we're given this image. He, this servant, this Messiah, this king, grew up before him like a tender shoot. The word shoot is an image of royalty, a line of kings. But there's a descriptor before it, a tender shoot. It's like this king is going to look like no other king before. This king is going to be ordinary. This king is going to be unimpressive. This king is going to grow up in a region that is out of the spotlight of Jerusalem, the temple. It's going to be in the city that people look down upon, a town that no one thinks highly of. It's going to be part of a family where parents are not real impressive. But he's still a king. And like a dry root out of dry ground, this king, he's going to be unexpected. Not like anyone has ever anticipated. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. Nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. Like one from whom people hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him in low esteem. Not some extraordinary king, in fact, pretty ordinary. You see, when it comes to the gospel, the good news, the royal announcement, we need to see who Jesus saw. We need to look at or look for the overlooked. In God's economy, the king is servant. In God's economy, it's not the best looking. It's not the most influential. It's not the people that our communities and our cultures put up on a stand. In God's economy, it's the ordinary. It's who Jesus was. Living in that town that no one wanted to go to. Being born to that family that just weren't real impressive. How he looked wasn't impressive. And you think about Jesus' life that we have recorded in the Gospels, the good news of Jesus. What we need to model. So we need to see who Jesus saw. We need to look for the overlooked. So there's two driving questions that I just want to rest within your soul. The first question is this: are you dying to self? If you are a Christ follower, I hope you feel so much tension. Are you dying to self? Are you living a life where everything, let me say it a different way, everything is in open hands? Hey, God, all of me and all that I have is yours. Or are you doing this? One hand closed behind your back, and you're like, God, here, everything in this hand. And this is what I've discovered in my spiritual journey. When I do this, one hand's closed behind my back. I'm like, but God, I'm giving you all of this. You know what God wants? He wants everything behind my back. He's like, Chris, I want that hand. Open that hand. God, hey, Chris, I want what's right here. And you know what God starts doing? He's prying my fingers open, because this is the posture. Are you dying to self? Jesus said it. Take up your cross. Follow me. Live this life as if you are already dead. Why? Because his kingdom is here now and forevermore. The second question: are you living as a servant? as a servant? Or are you trying to position yourself as king? Do you have a posture of being a servant? You see, as we approach Good Friday and celebrate on Easter, I want you just to keep the picture of how scandalous the scars of Jesus was. No one expected it. No one thought that this would be the storyline that God perfectly laid out for their Messiah, for King. No one. The Old Testament prophets didn't. Mary and Joseph didn't. The disciples didn't. No one anticipated. And God, in his perfect way, knew what he had to do through Jesus to redeem, to buy back, to ransom, to repair what sin had obliterated. Let's lean into the tension and realize to be a disciple, to be a follower of Jesus, means living a life that reflects the life Jesus lived. Let's pray. Lord, I pray that every one of us will lean into that tension. That we'll understand the good news. Is a different type of news that this world would anticipate. The good news, the royal announcement, is about your servant Jesus coming to die so that the nations, the ends of the earth, will know the depth of your love. Lord, may we die to self and live as a servant. In your name I pray. Amen.